So now moving to the next topic, which will be covered by Rafael. Can you Rafael talk a little bit about the new guidelines on the acquired distinctiveness and what opportunities this brings to trademark owners in Brazil, please?
Sure, Philip. This is also a very interesting topic, a very interesting development at the BPTO practice, because historically, the BPTO has always refrained from reviewing any claim based on acquired distinctiveness or secondary meaning. The office would say in the past that this was not explicitly provided for in our law, so it was not up to them to review. And historically, the office has always been very restrictive when it came to reviewing factual elements. In very narrow instances would the office review them. So if you had a trademark that had been rejected by the BPTO based on descriptiveness, and you wanted to claim secondary meaning or acquire distinctiveness, you actually had to go to court to secure such recognition. And the court, on the other hand, Brazilian courts, on the other hand, have always recognized that Brazilian law in general would accept protection over trademarks when it's possible to prove that even though this element could have been descriptive in its when it was firstly coined, based on continuous use, effective use, and particularly based on the recognition by consumers and by competitors, it has developed its own goodwill, its own distinctive, and is now recognized as a source of origin. The courts, we have court decisions back in the 80s, back in the 90s, recognizing that. And after a lot of pressure, perhaps from companies, IP holders, IP associations, the BPTO finally accepted to review that and changed its proceedings with a new regulation that will come into force next November 28th. So this is still not in force. And as of November 28th, title applicants or registrants, depending on the case, will have 12 months to adapt their applications, and that's a key point, whenever they want to claim secondary meaning or acquire distinctiveness. And basically, so two aspects that are very important here. So basically, what do we have to prove? So first, applicant would need to prove that based on substantial and continuous use of the mark, the mark has acquired distinctiveness by the time it was filed. And that's an important aspect because it's quite restrictive. So you have to prove that by the time you filed the trademark, it had already acquired secondary meaning, at least based on current interpretation of the BPTO and what it has been saying that we'll accept. Of course, we still have to see how it develops, but this is an important aspect. And also another thing that we should bear in mind that based on that there's no supplemental register here in Brazil, unlike the US. So you either go for the recognition of acquired distinctiveness, or the mark will be ultimately rejected. And another aspect which is quite difficult for when it comes to a continental country as Brazil is that in principle, the BPTO will require that such recognition is available and is proven at a national level. That could impose particular burden to some marks that are only regional. But unfortunately, this has been so far the approach that the BPTO has been indicating that it will follow. According to the regulation right now, we have certain moments where the applicant may, or the registrant may claim that its trademark has acquired distinctiveness. It could be either on filing date or within the next 60 days. Or you can also apply for this special recognition at appeal level. And this is a very interesting part you can do that as a subsidiary claim, which means that you can first claim that the mark is inherent distinctiveness for whatever reason, and claim that if the office does not consider this to be the case, that the office should review a subsidiary claim on acquired distinctiveness, and at that particular point, the office will open a new time frame for the appellant to submit evidence on such secondary meaning. But this is not only, these are not the only possibilities. You can also present a defense against a third-party opposition or nullity procedure based on secondary claim, on secondary meaning or acquired distinctiveness. So if a third party is challenging your trademark application based on descriptiveness, you will be allowed to defend yourself by claiming that it has acquired distinctiveness as long as you're able to prove that status. So the regulation will still come into force, and we are still waiting for additional details from the office on the guidelines. But we do have some previews on what will be the guidelines, particularly for the review of the evidence to be submitted and the type of evidence to be submitted. And the first one, as I've already said, the applicant will have to prove substantial and continuous use in a period of at least 3 years prior to the filing date. So there was a discussion when this was being in public consultation whether it would need to be a proof of 5 years or 3 years. Gladly, the office now is required only 3 years, and that's important because with online social media, trademark can become popular and famous and acquire a new level of distinctiveness in a very quick manner. So limiting the time frame for a shorter period, it has been a request from the IP associations, and it has been approved by the office. Another point that is that the office seems to require will be a survey. This historic, we'll be discussing high reputation in another section of our webinar today, but the webinar the BPTO has indicated that a survey is the objective way of evidencing this kind of acquired distinctiveness. And of course, based on our past experience with high reputation, the office will likely make this evidence almost mandatory, which I frankly don't think it's really necessary for all the cases in this particular instance, but we must follow what's going to happen. And the office has also indicated when discussing this during public consultations that it would request detailed history on the volume of sales and investments made on the trademark, which poses a very difficult point on confidentiality, because at the same time that the office has been indicating that detailed information on investments and volume of sales or offering of the trademark would be required, it has continually saying that they cannot guarantee confidentiality of information provided to the office. So we'll need to see what we are going to do with that, and we need to continuously check with the BPTO how to guarantee that this kind of information, which is crucial for companies and strategic for companies, will not, of course, fall in the hands of competitors or third parties or so on. So this is a specific point that calls for some attention, together with the fact that the office might actually request applicants to prove acquired distinctiveness for each and every product in the description. So in past meetings with the office, they have indicated that if you prove secondary meaning, for instance, for peaches, but you claim fruits, you might need to amend your description of goods to cover only those goods that are actually covered by the proof that you have been able to submit. So this is also a development that we need to watch closely. We don't know what's going to happen, but we should act conservatively if we want to succeed in this kind of new claims. And as a final point on evidence, declarations from third parties will be accepted, but the office has already indicated that if there is any relation, commercial relation or direct or indirect commercial relationship with the applicant, these kind of evidence might not be given very high weight. So we need to see what's going to happen in the future. And also, when the applicant is required to evidence some sort of substantial exclusiveness on the marketplace, as the office requires right now, the office indicates that it might take into account third-party applications composed of similar elements to define whether or not this sort of exclusivity in the marketplace is true or not, which in my view poses a particular concern, because if the applicant is able to evidence acquire distinctiveness also based on survey, meaning that the consumer does recognize that trademark as exclusively coming from a particular source, what weight should it give to all the trademark applications or registrations that exist in the registry and might not even be in use? If they were not sufficient to block the development of this particular goodwill, it should not carry a substantive weight in reviewing the claim of secondary meaning. This has also been discussed when we came to high reputation, and the office has not come up at that point either with a clear position on that aspect. So this is another point that we need to watch closely and see how this all develops. But at the end of the day, at least this provides applicants with a very important tool to protect their IP assets, their trademarks, in a much easier manner than when we had to resort to a court action to make your right valid and have it recognized. So, Felipe, back to you. Don't know if you have any additional comments.
Yeah, thank you, Rafael. I think well, you pretty much covered all the main aspects of the topics. What I just would like to highlight, you mentioned it already, but it's very interesting for me, is that how the trademark owners will need to invest time in the preparation for the application of the acquired distinctiveness, because as you mentioned, I think that the trademark office will be quite criterious in the analysis of evidence. And again, Brazil is a continental country, so we might have some challenges in providing all the necessary information. So again, surveys like they already do in high reputation cases, surveys will probably be very, very important. And so I think it will be very key to invest time in the preparation of the evidence before submitting it to the trademark office. But it's, again, a very good development, something that was requested by trademark users in Brazil for many years, and that has now been addressed by the local trademark office. So thank you for the coverage of the topic. Okay, so now moving forward to the high renown topic, Rafael, can you drive us a little bit through the new guidelines of the trademark office and what's new on the procedure for the recognition of high reputation trademarks in Brazil?
Sure, Felipe, thank you. And just to give some broader context here, In Brazil, we have this special protection for very famous trademarks. So once it's registered, you are able to seek a special declaration from the BPTO, which will protect the trademark for whatever classes of goods and services. It's a very, very broad protection for very special trademarks. And because of that, the BPTO has been applying quite stringent standards for reviewing this type of application for high reputation, given the scope of protection afforded to those trademarks. The last guidelines were published around 10 years ago. And what the office noticed is that as it started to require surveys as mandatory proof for the high reputation declaration, they started to notice that there was some sort of difficulty from some of the applicants to understand what the office was expecting with the survey, particularly with regard to questions and to the possibility of uh, indicating that it has reached the level of awareness and the level of reputation, including recognition of quality by the public that the office would expect for this type of trademark. Then what the office decided to do was to establish some guidelines for the survey itself, almost a methodology to be coined to help applicants to be focused on what the office was seeking when they asked for a survey for this type of protection. So after discussing the issue with survey companies, some of them which were continuously used by applicants in their applications for high reputation, and also after discussing that with stakeholders, they came up with some standards and guidelines for this type of survey. And as you probably know, when you apply for the recognition of high reputation, you have to prove a high level of awareness around the country, a high level of exclusivity as well, and a high level of reputation, meaning that the consumer would recognize that the products or services under the trademark as of having a high quality or having a high level of recognition. So what has the office done with that? The office has established some criteria for the questions, some criteria for the scope of the survey, including a minimum a number of interviews of 2,000 around the country, and also certain guidelines for how the research is going to be, the survey is going to be conducted relating to the trademark. If it's a word mark, it should be shown to the public or to those responding to their survey, either in block letters or being asked for the phonetic aspect. If it's a black and white logo, you can use colors. Which was also a doubt when we were preparing the surveys together with the survey companies. And there was this particular very interesting discussion about the possibility of online surveys. Initially, the office was a little bit conservative regarding the acceptability of this type of survey, particularly for services. They are offered online mostly, but we managed to convince the office that there should be no restrictions toward online surveys, as this is a valid methodology for this type of survey. But at the end of the day, one of the main aspects that raises some concerns that should actually be attract our attention here is the minimum level of awareness established by the BPTO regarding the results of the survey. So right now, the office requires at least 61% of both recognition and valid association between the trademark and the goods. That means that if you're not able with your survey to reach the level of 61%, already excluding the margin of error, which is usually of 2% in this kind of survey with 2,000 interviews. So we would actually have to reach 63% of awareness and association, and not only awareness. This is the first bar. This is the threshold to actually be able to apply for this type of recognition. Even then, you will only be easily able to get and to succeed in securing high reputation if you actually achieve 71%. If you achieve that level, the office will be comfortable with granting you that recognition. If you are between 61 and 71, you actually need to build a strong case on the high reputation that your trademark has achieved. So this is a very high threshold in my view, particularly when it comes to a continental country as Brazil. And right now, trademark owners will have to prepare for that, doing test surveys, see if they can really achieve that high level of recognition, or what can be done. For instance, additional investments on publicity, additional investment on marketing, activation of the brand, and other strategies that might be necessary to achieve, particularly when it comes to certain regions or certain social classes where the trademark has not really achieved the necessary level of awareness and correct association. On the other hand, the office knows that this is a very high investment for applicants when it comes to trying to secure this kind of recognition, and they have offered both their online channels and also contacts to try to cooperate with applicants when developing their surveys, whether or not the questions will be accepted, whether or not there should be additional questions, or even if the results will be in the right direction. So it's possible to discuss with the office draft surveys, for instance. They have opened that channel. However, they have also indicated that they are not able to provide full confidentiality to the information being provided, which means that if an applicant provides confidential information on sales, on investments, on advertisement strategies, so on, the office has already said that they will not be able to provide full confidentiality, and that we should reach out to them to discuss how this can be done. Once again, confidentiality becomes a very sensitive issue when it comes to recognition of a special protection afforded by our law. So this is also a point of attention. At the end of the day, at least the new guidelines provide additional certainty on what to do with a survey and how to actually prepare for the high reputation application, avoiding that additional expenses are incurred, as it was in the past when we submitted a survey. The survey was not good enough for the BPTO, and they asked for additional questions or additional points to be proven, which would require basically that a new survey would need to be done. So I think that this is, and for the sake of time, the key aspects and the key takeaways when it comes to this new methodology that has been developed by the office. But Felipe, if you have any insights on that. Um,
Thank you, Rafael. You covered very well. Uh, Again, my only remark here is about the fixed percentages. So I don't know what you think about it, but in my view, fixing the percentages beforehand, it's something that really, makes the whole proceeding more stringent. Uh, and especially because you have cases which you can be more flexible and maybe cases where you need to be stricter. So my only remark is about the fixed rates established by the trademark office. And I believe you agree. We discussed that before, and I believe you also agree with that. Uh, we have a question from the audience here, Rafael. Victor Kronenberger is asking, uh, as for the survey related to highly renowned marks, my understanding is that the BPTO establishes that when survey results range from 61 to 71%, further supporting documentation must be provided. Do you agree with that interpretation? And what type of additional supporting documentation do you believe the BPTO expects in such cases? What's
so
your view on
well,
that?
That's a good question, and I think, as you put it, Felipe, the matter of percentages will need to be reviewed, particularly by our courts. We do have precedents in a very interesting case back in the when we had the notorious trademark, which preceded the high reputation one, but had similar standards and requirements. And at the time the BPTO was requiring 70% of awareness, and it was a trademark for cereals, and it achieved 53%, if I'm not mistaken, which is huge when you consider that we have 200 million people in Brazil. So he's saying and the court bluntly said that requiring over 70% is requiring almost absolute knowledge of the trademark, which is almost impossible to reach. And they added that the law was not made for a handful of trademarks. So they accepted 53% in that particular case. And that was the case also for the BPTO prior to that new standards. If you had up more than 50%, you could, with other types of evidence, reach and succeed in obtaining um, high reputation. And as Victor asked, and you're absolutely right, if based on current new guidelines, if you have not achieved 71%, but has been able to achieve over 61%, between in that specific range, you need to submit additional evidence, which can be, for instance, information on the history of use of the trademark in Brazil, the investments on publicity, an assessment on the value of the trademark, and whatever evidence you might be able to submit, showing that indeed that trademark has achieved a very high degree of reputation in the country, and that use by a third party would necessarily end up representing unfair advantage and free riding on such reputation. So once again, I think that we need to see what our courts will say about that very high standard on 61% or even 71%. But regarding this additional evidence, I think whatever you can submit showing that it has a very high level of awareness and investments have been done and that consumers have been recognizing for instance, with prizes and awards that the trademark may have achieved, it would be probably sufficient to be able to achieve. Other than that, I think that new very high standards for the high reputation might unfortunately affect particularly luxury and fashion trademarks, which sometimes are victims of unfair competition and free riding, but sometimes are not able to achieve that high level of recognition among the entire Brazil and among all classes, all social classes. And that could end up needing additional strategies when you need to defend a famous trademark that might not be at the level that the office requires for the recognition of high reputation trademarks.
Now moving to our last point, I think a brief point. Also, Rafael, can you just share with us the initiatives of the trademark office as regards artificial intelligence? Of course, that's a topic that always, generates a lot of attention. So tell us what is the trademark office working at this moment?
Sure, Felipe. The BPTO has shared with us and without the IP community that it's also looking into AI. I think everybody is looking into AI. So if you don't look into AI, probably you're not in the century. But there are no concrete outcomes so far. But they have shared with IP practitioners some of their goals and some of the current projects. And the first one is to develop a search tool for examiners, which is supposedly will be available for the examiners by the end of this year. We have not heard whether or not this is is indeed a concrete outcome or an output of the endeavor, but that's their aim. And they would also like to, at the second stage, provide provide users with the same level of tools to make their filings easier and also have a better predictability on what the outcome would be when it comes to trademarks. Of course, we are now talking about trademarks. There are also some other developments being made at patent level and the patent department, but related to trademarks, these are the key expectations. We know that they have been trying to partner up with some other IP offices, have been talking to WIPO as they've always done, have been talking to EU but at the end of the day, the main expectation from the office is that artificial intelligence tools become an additional asset, an aid to the examiners and to the users, and will not simply replace examination or create a completely autonomous examination. Examiners in Brazil are very confident about their work. They have very high quality, and so they want to preserve that. But of course, as we said before, the BPTO has been receiving over almost 500,000 trademark applications each year. So they have to think on how to address that issue and how to handle that volume. And AI has been a possible avenue for them as a tool for helping them out based on the investment constraints that they always face relating to the hiring of new examiners. So let's see what happens. At least we know that they are looking into the matter with concrete objectives.
Yeah, thank you, Rafael. I have nothing to add. It's basically it's still very uncertain in what direction the trademark office will go. The certainty is that they need to look at AI as all offices around the world are doing to aid on their job, which is becoming more and more challenging with the amount of trademark applications that we receive each year. I was reading a statistic the other day that Brazil is on the path of becoming, I think, the fourth biggest trademark office in the world. So it's huge challenge for this examination, and certainly AI can have a very important role on that.